Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to another edition, two away from the 100th in-studio episodes of The Last Round. We're at number 98, Mike. We're almost to 100. What do you think about that?
Who thought we'd last this long, right?
I know, right? I thought we were going to tap out at 10, but we're still here. So we're still here providing content for you guys on a weekly basis, talking some boxing here off of a big weekend of fights. Probably in terms of boxing, I mean, maybe the most significant weekend of events and throughout, at least in this COVID pandemic era. I mean, is that pretty accurate? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I would have said so. Obviously the PBC card was, 6 good fights, 5 title fights, plus also the, Josh Taylor fight was a big fight in terms of, obviously, the potential future fight against Jose Ramirez. So, yeah, busy weekend.
Busy. But let's jump right into it. This past Friday, the 25th of September, from La Défense Arena in France, Tony Yoka gets the first round TKO over Johan Duhaupas. You guys might recognize Duhaupas' name, or is it Tuhuapas? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Somewhere along those lines. He fought Wilder a couple years ago. Wilder knocked him out, I think, in the 11th round. I think they fought in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't catch this fight, Mike, but I know you. I think you were able to see the highlights or anything like that. What'd you think about this fight?
I thought it was a good performance for, obviously, Tony Yoka. I think it was his first fight since he's been signed to the Top Rank banner. He also had, a brief spell where he was suspended for not failing a test, but he, I think, forgot to tell the people where he was going to be for the test. He ended up missing, I think, 2 or 3 tests when VADA showed up to test him, so he ended up getting a ban. Good win for him, probably the biggest name onto his resume at the minute. Obviously 8-0 as a heavyweight. Also, people might remember him. He fought Joe Joyce in the Olympic final, beat Joe Joyce. So I know that's a future fight that Joe Joyce and Sam Jones have been looking at, trying to get the revenge over Tony Yoka, later down the line in the pro ranks.
I could see that. I could see Joe Joyce fighting him again and especially trying to get that revenge win, like you said, in some respect like that. But also moving on, also this past Friday from the Grand Hotel in Tijuana, Mexico, on ESPN Deportes. Your favorite of mine. That's right, Mike. That is right. He's back. All right. And boxing fans, listeners, whoever you are out there, you're welcome. He's back and he's here to entertain you, whether it's a negative entertainment or positive entertainment. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., the son of the legend. I just want to laugh so hard just saying his name, like, I know we're going to jump into the details about this, but I don't even know what to say about it anymore. I don't, especially because me and you were at his last fight in Phoenix at the Matchroom show when he fought Danny Jacobs last December. This past Friday, like I said, he went up against Mario Abel Casares, and Chavez Jr., I mean, what would you say, for lack of a better term, he quit again. In the 6th round, they stopped the fight. It looked like Chavez had like a cut above like his eyebrow or his eye, something like that. It didn't look that crazy to me. I haven't really zoomed in or anything. It didn't look as worse as the injury that he had last December, when it was like a nose fracture or something like that, right? And he was saying that he was bleeding and he couldn't breathe or something like that. This had nothing to do with any nose. It was more of like above his eye or above his eyebrow or something like that. And then it was a technical knockout, I guess. And they went to the scorecards, and I thought it was funny because, like, when they were reading the scorecards, they're both from the same area, Culiacan, Sinaloa, in Mexico. So when they said from Culiacan, I was like, oh, Chavo Chavez got it. I mean, that makes sense. And then they announced Casares' name. I mean, I'm gonna let you take this one, Mike. What you can go first.
Just Chavez did the same thing as last time. I think he's just lost the will to fight now. I don't know whether, he's just made enough money. He was kind of making excuses, very early on in the fight about, kind of phantom headbutts, complaining to the referee a lot. And also, obviously when we were at the Jacobs fight last year, and he was winning. He was winning. Me and you were surprised, after all the rumors about him, being in camp and
Eddie Hearn even told us the next day on that episode he did with us here at the last round that he thought that Chavez might have been winning the fight.
Yeah, me and you totally agreed with him. So I think his heart's just gone. I just think he's lost that, that hunger to get in there and perform. I just don't know. After this, obviously that episode of when Eddie Hearn was on, he kind of embarrassingly said, he would still work with him because he puts bums on seats after doing it twice. I don't know whether Chavez has kind of, burnt his bridges now. He did it again. Is Eddie Hearn? I don't know what he got paid for this fight against Casares, but if he was going to, quit again, you may as well have done it in a big show and got paid. I don't know whether Eddie Hearn's going to really want to work with him after quitting twice.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this solidifies. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But I think this should solidify Eddie Hearn's mentality not to work with him again. I was surprised that DAZN had announced, I think it was like the week before or the week of the fight or a couple days before the fight, they were going to broadcast this fight, and they broadcasted it. It was on DAZN, and they put highlights up on YouTube and all that stuff. And, DAZN, I don't know, maybe Chavez Jr., when he fought Jacobs last year, there was still some type of agreement there. He was like, oh, okay, yeah. He's like, well, you guys get to broadcast my next fight as well. Or maybe Chavez and his team, I think he's still represented by Heyman. I don't know. Maybe they reached out to DAZN and they said, hey, you guys want to broadcast this fight? And they were just like, yeah, I mean, we don't got too many events anyways. Might as well do it. There's some people who will watch him, even if they, he's polarizing, I guess, if you want to call him that. But just reiterating, he got a cut like above his left, I believe it was his left eyebrow or his left eye. And then, I think they examined him in the corner, and you can tell that he, just based on his body language and some things you can make out from what he was saying, he just didn't want to continue. And then they stopped. And then you see Casares, as soon as they're saying that, like, they were going to stop the fight, Casares goes in the middle of the ring and he's like throwing his hands up and everything. Like, he's all happy. Like, he knows, like, hey, yeah, he just quit. I mean, like, do you think that should have been just like a TKO or like automatically instead of going to the scorecards? Or do you think they just went to the scorecards because it was Chavez Jr.? They're like, let's just go to scorecards, see if it still works out for him.
Well, I think they ended up saying it was down to an accidental headbutt. And obviously with it being past the fourth round, they just decided to go to the cards. I
don't understand Chavez Jr. has had, I think he's had over like 40 fights, over 50 fights. He's had a lot of fights in his pro career. And you can't tell me not one of those fights, and even in amateurs or whatever, like, he's never had headbutts or like rough inside style fighting like that or anything like that. Like, I mean, come on, like, or maybe he's just like you said, it's just a money thing. He's like, I've already made a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And so now, especially after the Jacobs fight, or maybe from the Jacobs fight forward or whatever, as soon as he gets hurt or something, or maybe it's a safety thing or a life thing where he's just like, oh, if I get hurt, even if it's a little bit, I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to tap out, or I'll end it. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I don't know. I obviously, if he would have got a win, people still would have been talking crap about him regardless, even if he would have won or not. But if he would have got a win, at least he could have been like, oh, well, he beat some guy, he's kind of back in something, I wouldn't necessarily put him back in the mix, but at least he's back in the win column if you can give him that. But I don't know. I didn't see any. I haven't looked up any interviews with his dad, Chavez Sr. Were you able to see any interviews with him? Like, do you know what he said post-fight?
The only ones I saw were in Spanish, so I couldn't, and there was no...
Come on, man. I thought you were bilingual, Mike.
No, not that well.
Come on. Oh, well, I wanted to see it, but I haven't had a chance to look, but I'm sure I'll check it out, and then I'll translate it for you, Mike. Maybe we can touch on it next week. But, I mean, I don't think it's difficult to determine what Chavez Sr. was feeling after that fight. I mean, like Chavez Jr. was technically the main event of that card, right? That small card in Mexico. Yeah, because I know Chavez, his dad Chavez Sr. was also on that card, fighting Jorge Arce. I think it was like the second or third time they fought or something like that. A little exhibition and stuff like that. And that was a cool little entertaining fight for people right there, and just to watch some old school guys go at it just to do their thing. But Chavez Jr., man, like he always does. He always takes the spotlight, whether it's good or bad. But I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I say within I'm going to say this right now. If in the next 6 months, if Chavez Jr. doesn't say that he's going into retirement, I'd be surprised. I would.
He seems like he's just a sucker for punishment at the minute. He doesn't really seem to train that well. I think that fight that he took he thought was just going to be something to get him back in the win column, and then he could come back onto the zone, onto a bigger card, on a matchroom card, and get a nice payday. And it backfired on him. Yeah,
it did. Big time. But that's the story of Chavez Jr. I mean, when would you say that Sergio Martinez was like his last really, I don't know if I want to say great, but like last really determined performance that he really gave? Would you say it'd be Sergio Martinez?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that was what, 2014?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Right around
5 or 6 years ago, yeah.
Right around there. I mean, that was his last really big, I guess opportunity, or not even opportunity, because he fought Canelo a couple years later after that. But I mean, like in terms of where he really gave it his all, or he really tried, and like, especially almost knocking him out or almost stopping him in the 12th round. I think that was his last really determined effort in his career. Because after that, he fought. I don't know. I think he fought somebody after that, or 2 more people after that. Then he fought Canelo, and then obviously Canelo kind of really schooled him. And then he fought Jacobs, and like you said, he was beaten, at least to me and you, and to a lot of people, and even maybe Eddie Hearn. Like Chavez Jr. was probably winning that fight. It was close after a couple rounds, but like Chavez Jr. was doing pretty well. And then I don't know, man. I don't know. I want to say that we're not going to see him again, but he might pop up again somewhere, especially in Mexico. Mexico, there's still some level of demand for him just because of his name. But like I said, if he doesn't announce any retirement plans within the next 6 months, I'd be surprised. But I'm sure you're looking forward to the next time we talk about him, right, Mike? Moving on to this past Saturday, the 26th of September, from the York Hall in London on ESPN Plus, Josh Taylor, the unified WBA and IBF super lightweight world champion, gets the first round KO over Aponin Kongsong. I tried the first name this time, Mike. Last week I didn't want to give it a shot, but I gave it a shot. This ended, just as quick as it started from the first bell, from like a body shot, I believe, pretty much to the liver area. Mm-hmm. And I think even Bob Arum, who's, the American promoter of Josh Taylor, I guess you could call it, was criticizing Kongsong as an opponent. I mean, what'd you think about the Taylor's performance and Kongsong as the opponent now that the event's over?
The performance is punch perfect for the one round that we had him. Wasn't really be able to tell if Ben Davidson, his new trainer, had made any differences to Josh Taylor. The opponent, he was a mandatory, so unfortunately, it's just somebody that you have to fight. The fight was over so quickly that there's nothing much you can tell by how good Kong Song was, and we can't really tell how good Josh Taylor is under Ben Davidson. So onwards and upwards to the next Jose Ramirez fight, which is obviously all that we were hoping. Fingers crossed that Josh Taylor was going to get through this fight, so we all get to see probably one of the biggest fights of, I would imagine, the early next year. Obviously, we're in October, starting Thursday, so I don't think we'll see that till, I don't know, maybe Easter time next year, and hopefully we'll be able to get some kind of crowd into the US or the UK, wherever they decide to place that fight.
Who do you think, if talking about Easter time, facing off against Ramirez, a Taylor Ramirez, unified world championship fight like that. I mean, in terms of how does Josh Taylor do in terms of drawing a crowd before all this COVID stuff in the UK? How is he doing?
He does well. Had quite a few fights in Scotland, and then obviously he had the fight against Regis Prograis in London, and obviously the British fans are pretty diehard fans, and I believe he sold out. Both of those. So
right. So I would think, just because usually that's how it is in boxing, that he would come to the United States, right? And maybe this would be like a Vegas fight.
I think they'll probably do it wherever they can probably get the biggest site fee, and then also I think depending on which countries opened up first for more fans. Obviously, over here, depending on the state, Kansas City had fans in the NFL. I know we've had a couple of fans in some of the soccer stadiums back home, kind of just trialing it out. So, come Easter time next year, depending on the site fee and who's going to let in the most fans, that may be the deciding factor.
No, you're right. And I'm really looking forward to that fight too. They each have 2 titles. They're going up against each other, unified matchup. They're the 2 best in the division at 140 pounds. I think as of right now, basing it off of each of their last performances, obviously Taylor can't really make too much of a big judgment based on this first round. He did what he had to do, but you couldn't really. We didn't have too much evidence to evaluate him going into the Ramirez fight, obviously. But I would say I would probably pick Ramirez at this point. At this point, I would lean towards Ramirez. It's like a soft lean, You would lean towards Ramirez to beat Taylor? I would, yeah.
Personally, I would go with Taylor just over the fact of, the fight against Postal. He had the big fight against Regis Prograis, which I think brought everybody's attention really to Josh Taylor.
Right.
He's had a lot of big fights in just his 17 professional fights where I think we both kind of touched on, Jose Ramirez is a little bit more wrapped in cotton wool because he was earning so much money and selling out crowds in Fresno. His biggest fight really to mention was obviously the one against Mo Hooker. He did really well in that. But it's 2 great fights, 2 come forward styles. It's a 50-50 really. I would give it personally more to Josh Taylor. It could be the fact that I'm British, maybe.
Yeah, and it could be the fact that I'm Mexican. I guess
could be.
I guess we're just aligning with our respective flags. But like I don't know. I like I said, it's a soft lean. I agree that it is, an even fight. I guess if I'm leaning towards Ramirez, I wouldn't say it's 50-50, obviously, but it's as close to as 50-50 as you could get. But if I don't want to say oh no, this is a great. I don't want to give the generic answer to people and say oh, this is a great fight. I don't know who's going to win. It which is true, but I want to be able to stand on one side or the other as of right now and say, you know what, I think he's going to take it. I think Ramirez is going to take it at this point. And I probably won't change up until they schedule the fight and until it's over. Just because they shouldn't be fighting anybody else. After this, they should be scheduled to fight each other next. Like you said, probably sometime in Easter or hopefully within the first quarter of 2021. But, obviously they're both associated with Top Rank. But I just think with Ramirez, like I said, it goes back to being trained by Robert Garcia and the work he gets in that gym, especially sparring. He spars Mikey Garcia. He sparred Mikey Garcia quite a few times. And Garcia is going to help him prep for this fight as well. And I know they help each other prep for their fights. I just think the work that he gets in that gym is just, I don't know. If you're looking at the minute details behind each of their careers and stuff, I agree that Taylor's had in only 17, 18 fights, he's had, good wins and good opponents where he's, overcome those odds or whatever it was and got the win. But, if it's 50-50, like we say it is, then we're going to have to look at, outside circumstances and what we think leans towards one fighter. And that's why I look at Ramirez with the whole Garcia Boxing Academy over here in Riverside, California, and the type of work they get in there. I mean, look at how many times we've tweeted on the last round Twitter handle, like, what are they feeding all those fighters over there at Robert Garcia's Boxing Academy? I mean, it seems like they all, even if they lose, they go down swinging. They fight until the end. So that's why that's my little X factor, I guess, as of right now. So I don't know, but like I said, like it's a tough bout to choose who's gonna win. But you think you're gonna change before the fight?
No, I think Ramirez obviously gets good sparring at Robert Garcia's gym, but I think he's kind of struggled with Postal, and I think Josh Taylor just has a very good boxing IQ. I think he's very big for the weight, and if he kind of looks at what Postal did, and Ramirez just really struggled to get inside. Postal was the taller fighter. I believe that Taylor will be the taller fighter, if I've got that right.
Is he taller? I thought Ramirez was taller. Ramirez is pretty tall.
Let's have a look.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't know why it popped into my head that Taylor was smaller. But maybe I'm wrong. Mike's looking it up right now.
But I wish we had the same size, both 5'10".
Oh, no way. I'm surprised about that. I don't know why I thought Taylor was a little smaller. I thought he was maybe 5'7". Oh.
I just think that if Taylor kind of looks at what Postal did, and Ramirez struggled really to get around his jab, it just for those
right.
Some people had Postal winning. Like Tim Bradley when he was kind of obviously talking about the fight on ESPN. Yeah. Him and Andre Ward had a little tiff, because of the fact that Andre Ward was kind of siding with Ramirez in what I thought were clear Postal early rounds.
No, you're right. Yeah, but above all, hopefully that fight happens next. Hopefully there's no injury. There's no injury in training or outside of training. Hopefully everything looks good, and hopefully they can get some fans in that fight, because there's obviously a lot of fans they would want to see that fight, especially if they had it over here on the West Coast of the United States, or even in the UK. I think there's a lot of interest in this fight, especially as a unified championship, and it's going to be on ESPN over here in the United States. Hopefully it's on regular ESPN, like a Lomachenko Lopez, as the main event. I don't think they would charge like a fee for. They might. I don't know. They possibly might, but I'm looking forward to that. That's definitely a 2021 fight to watch. So hopefully it gets made soon. And then moving on, also this past weekend from the Plaza Media Broadcasting Center, or Plaza Media Broadcasting Center in Munich, Germany, on DAZN. Maris Brendis, I can never say his name right, gets the 12-round unanimous decision win over Dorticos, who suffers the second loss of his career, and this was for the IBF Cruiserweight title. I'm going to say I thought Dorticos was going to take it, and I was surprised.
Yeah, the fight never really got started and lit as much as we thought it was. I think we all thought it was going to kind of be explosive after going off, last year's, or was it 2 years ago, the World Boxing Super Series, when we had Usyk kind of jumped onto everybody's screens and really took the world by storm after winning that. This World Boxing Super Series was great. The final was a little bit of a letdown. Still a good fight though between two of the best cruiserweights on the planet. Maris Bradis took it, and I don't know whether he's going to do the same as Usyk, maybe, and move up to heavyweight, try and get a few final paydays before he sails off into the sunset. But,
I can see that.
I think we're all big fans of the World Boxing Super Series, and hopefully we get another one.
I don't think we are.
When I saw an interview done by our friends at Boxing Social, they kind of spoke to Callie Sutherland, and he touched on the fact that they hope they can, and his dream would be to do one with the heavyweights, but he said that just contracts and
it's definitely not going to happen with the heavyweights, especially with all the heavyweights being aligned with different people. I don't see it.
One that he touched on that he'd like to do and could be a possibility would be trying to kind of copy Tom Loeffler and do the Superflies.
I could see that. I could definitely see that because it's a lot easier to make because those guys are, they're not really aligned from a hardcore sense to promoters, I guess.
And they're cheaper, just well.
They're cheap. They're right. Yeah, they're cheaper to put on. Obviously, the expenses you would have to put on for the super flyweights and stuff like that is a lot less than you would have been for like a heavyweight boxer or boxers like an Anthony Joshua, a Deontay Wilder, a Tyson Fury, a Ruiz Jr., Dylan White, Povetkin. There's, they just probably one of those guys, maybe like an AJ or a Wilder alone would be, 5 times more than all the expenses for the Superflies, So I get it. I mean, obviously, I'd be on board with a heavyweight World Boxing Super Series. That'd be awesome. But that's never going to happen. I mean, I don't want to say never going to happen, but it's likely not going to happen. There's just too much politics. In the heavyweight division, it's always been like the most lucrative division in boxing and watch division in boxing to an extent. So, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm sure they'll try to have talks with respective teams and camps, but that's too much money. That's way too much money. Unless you have all the fights in where is it? Saudi Arabia, and they want to foot the bill like a site fee, like, oh yeah, we'll pay it. Oh, okay, great. I mean, I'm sure that you would get their attention with that because they're just like, oh yeah, we'll pay you this amount of money, and then Saudi Arabia puts up a big portion of the bill. But I don't know. But like I said, those scores of that fight, Breedis took the win. 114, 114, 117, 111, and another 117, 111. So I know the draw score, the 114, 114, that was a kind of courteous score, at least to me, to Dorticos. So, but like I said, going back to my original statement, I thought Dorticos was going to take it, but, I guess not. I guess not. And then speaking about Usyk really quick, he needs to come back. I know he was injured, but whatever.
End of October.
Is that official?
Yeah, they put out the poster, I think, was this week or last week against Derek War Cesar. So,
nice.
That'll be on DAZN for us.
That's sweet. Yeah, man, I'm telling you, Usyk is a wild card at heavyweight. I know he's like shorter than a lot of these guys, but like, I'm telling you, man, Usyk, just because of his talent, I think he gives a lot of people trouble. I think he does. But we'll see. But I'm definitely looking forward to his return back into the ring at the end of October on DAZN. Also, moving on, this past Saturday from the Mohegan Sun Casino, the Bubble, according to the PBC, on Showtime pay-per-view, headlined by the Charlo brothers, your favorite twins in boxing, Mike. Jamal, dang it. I'm telling you, these names always get me. Jamal, it always gets me. Jamal Charlo gets the 31st victory of his career and retains his WBC middleweight world title with a unanimous decision win in 12 rounds over Sergey Derevyanchenko, which I would label, and a lot of other people, as the best win of Charlo's career. He definitely faced adversity. Derevyanchenko, at least to me, I think I picked Derevyanchenko last week. I picked Derevyanchenko to win last week just because I thought, third time's a charm after Triple G Jacobs. So I was wrong. I was definitely wrong. Charlo went in there and did his thing. And he, but he was hit. It's not like Derevchenko wasn't in the fight. There was a couple swing rounds, at least from when I was watching it. There was a couple swing rounds, but I mean, you know how it is. Whoever the A side is, especially being on Showtime or whatever. I know they're both like Heyman guys, but like Charlo's obviously the more marketable one. When they're swing rounds, it usually kind of leans towards the A side fighter. So I was like, oh yeah, okay. When it's a swing round, it's going to go towards Charlo. But I mean, honestly, if you looked at it objectively, if you would have gave those swing rounds to Derevchenko, it could have been a different story. I mean, it could have been a draw, or it could have. I mean, I don't know. I think, especially when Charlo said after the fight, he was like, "Yeah, this guy's the real deal." Like he said it in front of the camera. He was like, "This guy's as tough as they say he is." He acknowledged it. But I think that was probably the best fight of the night in terms of competitiveness, especially towards the last maybe 10, 15 seconds of the round number 12. Derevchenko was actually pressuring Charlo, and I remember I told my brother who was watching it too at that time. I told him, I was like, if this was 3 more rounds, if this was 15 round fights like it was back in the day, I could see Derevchenko taking that fight in 15 rounds. But what'd you think about Charlo's win, and obviously him retaining his WBC middleweight title?
Definitely his breakout performance for me. I think a lot of people, had Charlo quite high up because he was obviously, rightly the WBC champion, but, his resume was kind of slightly padded in my opinion. Recent victories over like Dennis Hogan, who's kind of small for that weight category. Brandon Adams, another one, not really a big name. So this definitely was, I thought, him going in there with his best performance, the best person on his resume so far. I thought he did very good, stuck to a very good game plan, just used his length to use that really good jab that he has and just wouldn't let, Derevchenko get in on the inside. So, onwards and upwards for him. I'd like to see him in there with some of the bigger names now. But, yeah, he's definitely deserved the win and, is rightfully the, WBC champion.
Right. And if people don't remember, if the listeners don't remember, Charlo didn't win the WBC title. He was gifted it. You would say he was gifted it by the WBC after Canelo Alvarez was elevated to their franchise champion, whatever that is. So would you say, Mike, that Charlo, with this win over Derevchenko, would you consider this a world title win, and he's a recognized world champion at 160 pounds?
Yeah, definitely. This is, Charlo now after beating Derevchenko, who, his only defeats before were against, Triple G and, Daniel Jacobs, 2 guys that I think we'd all, agree are, A-level fighters. So, yeah, this is his best win for me. This is something that cements him as, the top of the division.
Right. Yeah, I think he's definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely think he should be recognized as a worthy holder of that world title, or a world title, whatever you want to label it as. But I know Derevchenko, his eyes were swollen, or one of his eyes was swollen, and he had some bad bruising on his face, obviously. So, do you think that if he didn't suffer from those injuries or those cosmetic damages that he was taking, do you think that would have affected the outcome of the fight or affected Derevchenko's performance in a more positive way?
No, I don't believe so. Those obviously were caused by, Charlo's, terrific jab that he had that night. It's not only has he got a good reach, but his jab's obviously very heavy. Derevchenko's face was pretty beaten up and pretty swollen, thanks to that jab that he has. So, he kind of uses the attributes that he has really well. So I think, going forward now, looking at that performance, I think he'll be hard to beat. Right.
And then Brian Custard of Showtime interviewed him after, and Charlo was saying look, I told you we've been saying we're the real deal and stuff like that. And, it's funny to see the contrast between him and his brother. at the 154 Charlo and the 160. It's funny to see the contrast because you can obviously tell the Charlo brother at 154 pounds is a lot more, I guess you would call, excited, in terms of how he conducts himself and the type of behavior he exhibits.
He's always smiling.
Yeah, he seems like he takes a lot more things personal. You can tell they both take things personal, but you can tell that the Jamal, which is the middleweight one, I feel like is a lot more, I guess, quiet would be the word, even though it's not really the appropriate word. But I did have an issue when Brian Custer was interviewing him, and he asked him, and he's like, pretty much what do you think is next? Chris Eubank Jr. called you out. Who was the other name? Chris Eubank Jr. Who was the other name, Mike? I texted you right after that.
Was it Andrade?
Andrade, who has the WBO middleweight title, I believe. Okay, first of all, Andrade, or is it Andrade? I think it's Andrade. Andrade, I know he does have a title, so I get it. Call him out, take his title, boom. Or make a fight with him, take his title, boom. But that's pretty much the only thing. Why? Because he has a title. Eubank Jr., I don't know. It's funny when they ask him, when they told Jamal Charlo about, potential next opponents, and they don't mention any of the top middleweights in the world. There's no mention of Canelo Alvarez. There's no mention of Triple G. There's no mention of Danny Jacobs. The top 3 middleweights in the world. I would say that Charlo is now number 4 behind those 3. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think we all know why they weren't mentioned, because obviously they're on the wrong side of the street. They don't want to start promoting, different fighters from different promotions. Obviously, a lot of those are signed to, Matchroom or and DAZN. I think the fight that we could probably see, I think, would be Chris Eubank Jr., because he seems to really work with the PBC. They mentioned that on air. It's a world title shot for Chris Eubank Jr., so they'll try to keep everything in-house, just in case, Charlo does come unstuck and does lose the titles. At least they've lost it to, somebody else in the PBC house. So
you're right, yeah. But I just thought it was interesting when they mentioned Eubank Jr.'s name, and, they mentioned Andrade in there just because even though Andrade's a DAZN fighter, he's a Matchroom fighter, Andrade's purse isn't large. So even if they made a fight with him, Eddie Hearn would likely put Andrade on a Fox or Showtime platform for that fight, just because Charlo has a bigger name. So I think they knew that. It's a business at the end of the day. If they call out Canelo, you're gonna have to go where Canelo tells you to go. If they call out Triple G, you're gonna have to go wherever Triple G tells you to go. And Danny Jacobs, honestly, that's the fight that I would want to see Charlo in, especially after they both just fought Derevyanchenko. And we were texting about this, and I told you, remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, when there was a fight in Brooklyn. I believe it was a PBC fight or something like that. And in the backstage after the fight, there was some press back there and stuff like that, and they were interviewing Jamal Charlo, and then I think it was Jamal, and Danny Jacobs walks by, and then they have some words, and then Danny Jacobs gets in his face, and they start going back and forth, and then Danny Jacobs pretty much tells him, in different words, he's like, you're not even touching $1 million purses yet.
Yeah, you ain't touching M's or something like that. He says.
That's what he was saying. So he was pretty much telling him that he's like I'm touching $1 million purses. He's like, you haven't even touched any yet, and then you can see Charlo just kind of succumb to it, like he didn't know what to say. I thought after that, I was like, man, this would be a great fight. Especially after they both just beat Derevyanchenko. I think a fight him and Jacobs, in terms of competitiveness, I think that would be the next great test for Jamal Charlo. What do you think? Am I wrong or am I right?
No, you're right. That's a great fight. It's probably a step in the right direction for Charlo. That's another big name for his resume. But from all we hear behind the scenes, I think, Jacobs is just going to follow the money, and the easy money leads to that fight with Gabe Rosado.
Yeah, I guess. But see, though, like I've always been a fan of Danny Jacobs, and even more because is he still represented by Al Heyman? Is he?
Yeah, I think he's still with. He went to Matchroom. I don't know whether that contract's up.
I'm not sure.
He signed with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn for I can't remember how many fights.
Right.
So I think he's still on DAZN because I think they were trying to put obviously that fight that we were at with the Chavez and Jacobs, and obviously Rosado was on the same card. Right. Those two have beef, so I believe that those two are going to be matched up. That was the plan.
Right. But like I've also gained a lot more respect ever since like Jacobs being represented by Al Heyman a couple years ago when he signed to HBO. Obviously, he signed to HBO to try to get Triple G and Canelo, and he did get a Triple G fight. And then he gets Canelo on DAZN later on, obviously. But he signed with DAZN. Like we don't see too many Al Heyman guys do that. And like at least for if I had to speculate, I would think that Jacobs has enough pull to tell Al Heyman, hey, you don't have anybody for me to fight over here. So I'm going to go, I want to sign with them and I want to get those two because that's where the money's at. And those are the best guys. And Jacobs made it happen. Obviously his team helped and stuff like that, but I would think that Jacob took the initiative like that and went to Al Heyman and convinced Al Heyman to let him sign with HBO, get the Triple G fight, and then sign with DAZN and Matchroom and get the Canelo fight. And essentially, would you consider Danny Jacobs still a PBC fighter?
I don't think so. I think he's Matchroom, and he also moved up, didn't he? To
he's Matchroom, yeah, but like as an Al Heyman guy is what I'm saying. Like
he's probably still advised by it, even though Muhammad Ali Act or whatever he's technically supposed to be. But I think all roads lead to Rosado because
that's funny. When's the last? Did you ever think you were ever going to say that? All roads lead to Rosado.
From what we hear, Jacobs is all about the money. That's an easy fight, probably a good payday. I'm sure they'll stir up some beef on social media to make that. So
right. No, you're right. But we'll see. But one last point about Derevyanchenko. Derevyanchenko is like I would say he's like the Sean Porter of the middleweight division. Like doesn't matter who he fights or whatever. Like they're all gonna have a tough time with him, and like he's gonna make you like adapt to his style, and you're just gonna have to fight through it, pretty much. I think Derevyanchenko is just that type of fighter. The only one who might be able to adapt and kind of do his own thing against Derevyanchenko, I would say is Canelo. I would say, but all the other ones, I think they all have a tough time. He's already shown he's fought Canelo, Triple G, Jacobs, and Charlo. Not Canelo. He's fought Triple G, Jacobs, and Charlo, and they all had tough times with him. Arguably Derevyanchenko, people say that some people scored it for Derevyanchenko when he fought Triple G. I don't know. Derevyanchenko still has enough years ahead of him and enough talent left ahead of him where he can get a couple more fights, but people are still going to be intimidated to fight him because he is such a hassle to be in the ring with. But moving on, Brandon Figueroa gets the 10th round TKO over Damian Vasquez. This was for WBA Super Bantamweight title. What'd you think about Figueroa's win and performance, Mike?
It's a good fight to watch, kind of been in neutral, didn't really have a favorite in the fight. Lots and lots of punches thrown. Brandon Figueroa obviously just in there, just constant pressure. And, he's 21-0, WBA Super Bantamweight champion, but he's been matched really well. I don't know whether it's just because he's a pretty boy or something like that. I'm not too sure whether he's a huge ticket seller, but PBC seem to like him, and it's another win for him. So, Damian, I know
he's been on a lot of cards. That's what you were saying, right?
I think he's 8th.
It's crazy.
So he's doing something right behind the scenes. I don't know whether he puts a lot of bums on seats or something like that, because they seem to like him there.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of pay and stuff like that, and consistent work like that, it's working out. But I think he's only what did we say? 23, 24?
Yeah, he's young
guy.
Yeah,
young guy, right? And he's arguably been on the most PBC events since PBC was created, I guess.
Yeah, since they signed the contract with Fox.
Right. Yeah. So I guess it's not a bad outcome to have for him. But moving on, John Casamero gets the third round TKO over Duke Micah. This was for the WBO bantamweight title. I picked Micah last week, so obviously I lost again. Tell me what you thought about this card or about this matchup, Mike.
I think we both kind of thought that it may be a step too far for a Duke Micah, but it was in one of those situations where can you turn down a world title shot? He got to 24-0, hadn't really fought any of those upper echelon guys, gets the chance to fight, Casemiro, I imagine, for probably his biggest payday. You have to take it. He went in there, but Casemiro was just too big, too strong. Duke Micah was lucky to survive the second round. I text his team afterwards just to make sure that Duke Micah was fine. And, Chris Glover and the team said that, he was good and, he'll be back. He lives to fight another day. So good on him.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, he lives to fight another day, and it's first professional loss. But out of 25 fights, he's won 24 of them. So I think he's still in a pretty solid position, especially as a former Olympian. I think he still has some decent pedigree there to be able to recover and recoup and move forward. Also on that card, Daniel Roman, local fighter around here in Southern California, Thompson's Boxing, promoted, makes his debut with the PBC and gets a 12-round unanimous decision win over Juan Carlos Payano. I remember you texted me after this fight saying that Payano's stats for this fight were a little better than Roman's, right?
Substantially.
Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what do you think, Mike? I sound off on this. What do you think?
It was the exact same fight of when he fought Akhmadaliev. It was, Akhmadaliev was kind of more of a headhunter. Danny Roman, as usual, just goes to the body, constant pressure. And I think sometimes that, when you go to the body, it's kind of, people sometimes don't see it. It's kind of like misunderstood work, because in most fights, people headhunt, so people don't see it. So sometimes I think, that's why Danny Roman in the Akhmadaliev fight maybe didn't get the decision. And in this fight, I thought Payano outworked him. I think Danny Roman only landed with 5 jabs over 12 rounds. Payano threw more, connected more. Danny Roman had some good work, and, I picked him to win because he's a local fighter for here and, big fan of his work. But personally, I thought Payano should have won on the scorecards. And, I think Danny Roman, managed to really kind of pull one out the bag, because all 3 judges just went his way. So if you look at the punch stats, it tells a different story.
Yeah, you're right. I think when you told me that, I did look him up, and it was a pretty stark contrast between the punch stats. But obviously Roman is a more marketable fighter, and PBC, like you said, if there's enough swing rounds or something that could be at least labeled a swing round, it'll most likely go to the A side fighter, which usually that's how it works. It is what it is. But I still like Roman. Like you said, I think like you said, I would agree that it was very similar to the Akhmadaliev fight. Just had a tough time, kind of go in there and move around and do his thing. But I like Roman. I don't think he was technically outclassed just based on the stats, on the punch stats. But two back-to-back fights like this, one a loss and one a win, but they're pretty similar. Mm-hmm. I mean, what does that kind of say? Does he need a new trainer? I mean, what would you change if you were on his team?
I think that the problem Danny Roman has, in my opinion, is that he only really has one gear. he gets into that gear, and he just goes to work. He's not very eye catching. It's effective, but in terms of being a judge, he doesn't really. He doesn't start fast, end fast. He's not one of those guys that's like, okay, there's 30 seconds left in a round. Let's just put a rubber stamp on this round. He just gets into his rhythm, and then off he goes. He just goes to work. And, Payano, I think if he didn't fade over the last kind of 3 or 4 rounds in that fight, probably would have taken it, because I think, in my opinion, I think Roman kind of stole the fight probably over the last 3 rounds.
Right, yeah. Roman seemed like he was a little busier after that. But I think Roman said that he's looking for he'd be open to a rematch with Akhmadaliev to try to get his titles back, which I wouldn't mind seeing. Obviously, I mean, I know he lost that fight, but it wasn't like just like in that one, he didn't get technically outclassed, So I think I would still want to see that rematch again. So I'm all for it. Like you said, he's a local fighter around this area, so more power to him. The baby-faced assassin. I think there's like multiple fighters in the sport of boxing who have that nickname. So shout out to all the baby-faced assassins in the sport of boxing.
You got to give him some credit that Danny Romano will fight anyone.
No, he will. Yeah, which is great for boxing fans and us in the press and especially as fans. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. It's I guess you would call it a rare breed in the sport of boxing.
Doesn't pick and choose his fights, coming back off a loss to then go and fight Juan Carlos Payano.
Right.
That's not a gimme.
No, not at all. Not at all. So he's definitely showing people like, hey man, I'm down to fight. So it was cool. Yeah, I completely agree. Also moving on, he made weight. He made weight this time, Mike. Luis Neri, Reynoso trained, gets a unanimous decision win over Aaron Alameda for the vacant WBC super bantamweight title. At least from what I saw on Twitter, Neri was still getting a ton of criticism from people. I think a lot of people's opinions have been permanently affected just based on his past behavior in the sport. What do you think? What do you think about this performance and his prospects for the future?
I think over the 6 fights, if you were going to lump money on anybody getting a KO, I think 99% of us would have stuck our money on Luis Neri. He was going into the fight. He was 30-0 with 24 KOs. Normally he goes in there, kind of just goes to work and gets people out of there. So I don't know whether it was just the fact that he was facing a southpaw in Almeida. Was it the fact he's with his new trainer under Reynoso and they're trying to tweak his style? I don't know, but he looked kind of off. I don't know whether it was just a one-off. He struggles making weight quite a lot. Or was it just a fact he faced a southpaw, which was kind of unusual for him? Most people you face are obviously orthodox fighters. So
yeah, that's what I think. I think it was a whole southpaw issue. I mean, nobody likes facing southpaws. I think everybody knows that.
That's true.
So, but your favorite of mine, Luis Neri. Go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't a good performance for him. And with the troubles he's had over the last few years,
right?
I think a lot of the TV companies, I think, are going to obviously go against him because obviously, he's missed weight. I think he's actually banned from fighting in China because he missed weight so many times over there.
It's crazy, yeah.
So, I think just get his head down, just work, and then hopefully, we'll get some wins. Because on his day, he's a good fighter. He does exactly what we want to see. He gets people out of there, so. Right.
No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. But he's definitely alienated a good portion of the boxing fans, at least on Twitter. But we'll see how as time moves forward where he goes from here. And also the opening bout of this card, at least on the television portion, which I was surprised. I didn't know it was going to be the opening bout. I thought it was going to be like a co-main and then the main. But it was the opening bout. Jermell Charlo, the 154-pound Charlo, gets the 8th round KO over Jason Rosario. And becomes the unified WBC, IBF, and WBA world champion at 154 pounds. Rosario was down in rounds 1, 6, and 8. Even though he was down in a couple in those rounds, it obviously if you're just reading it, without watching it first, it does seem like Rosario did get outclassed or, dominated. Rosario, at least to me, Rosario still had some moments where he kind of put up a decent fight. But I think kind of jumping on to what most people were talking about that fight is how it ended. Charlo ended the fight with it looked like a quick jab to the stomach solar plexus area. And then it didn't look, even on the replay and you studying it, it didn't look like it was that, for lack of a better term, deadly. But it seems like, some people were saying that Rosario took a dive, that it was rigged. I mean, like, I know that's always going to happen in boxing. I mean, we've seen it before. There's been times even as much boxing as we see, we watch, we've said, you know what, that kind of, I think we talked about it with Romero Duno and Ryan Garcia, that fight looked kind of like, well, that looked kind of strange. This one, obviously, I think the initial reaction was like, what the hell? Like, that, was this rigged? But Rosario was already down multiple times before. And I did see a couple explanations on, from people on Twitter and stuff. And you tell me if you agree with this, Mike. But, like, people think that, like, he got hit as soon as maybe he was kind of, like, in the middle of his breathing. And if you get hit there, obviously, if you get hit in the body, especially in the solar plexus area, while you're breathing or in the middle of, like, you taking a breath or as your body's working to take a breath, it could negatively affect you. And because when he fell down, it looked pretty bad. It looked like he was kind of semi-convulsing, like his body was just shaking. I mean, what'd you think about that outcome?
No, I kind of agree with what you said. I think obviously, if you get, punched in the stomach for something that you haven't had chance to brace for, I think obviously it may have taken the wind out of him, and that's kind of why you saw him convulsing, because, he was struggling to breathe because of the fact that, Charlo had winded him. I don't think someone of, like Rosario would take a dive, because he's just won those world titles. If he beats Charlo, he still had a puncher's chance because of, he's a heavy-handed guy. Is he going to just take a little payoff and, blow all those future paydays that he would get as, the unified world champion? I don't see that. I think that's just people, clutching at straws. It was just funny that the fact that we had two kind of unusual body KOs, obviously this one by Charlo and then the one we touched on by Josh Taylor. Both kind of unusual to have two on the same day. But, Charlo, like we touched on earlier, is a breakout performance for me from him. He came unstuck against Harrison, managed to come back and beat Harrison. And then now, obviously, a great performance against Rosario. Rosario was kind of odd because, he was down in round 1, round 6 and round 8. But the rounds in between, there was probably 2 or 3 that Rosario actually won. So, the rounds that he wasn't getting dropped, he was actually kind of winning.
Right. I do think that even though Charlo is now the unified champion at 154 pounds, at least to me, there's not really anybody who stands out at 154 pounds as the king, because these belts, they've been passed around so many times throughout the last year or two. I think Harrison still has a claim to something. Him and Charlo have split 1-1, so I think they need to fight again. Julian Williams is still there. Obviously Rosario, he just lost, but then Lara's still there, even though he's a veteran. Like, Lara's still kind of difficult to fight, and Jarrett Hurd is still there. Like, I mean, what do you agree with me or do you disagree with me? I don't think there's anybody really that stands out at 154 pounds as the king. There's nobody, even though Charlo has the belts now, or even what Rosario did. There's nobody really who stands out like, oh yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy.
No, I totally agree. I think it's one of those where really the titles could be passed round. I think if I was Charlo, the fight that I would go for would be to try and win and complete all of them, and is to take the WBO off Patrick Teixeira.
Yeah, I could see that. But see, like, that'd be smart to do, because I think Charlo would obviously be the heavy favorite in that fight. Definitely.
Undisputed. It completes the collection.
Yeah, and he can be I think that's honestly, in terms of legacy and everything, that's the best route to go. but I just don't see it happening just because Teixeira is a Golden Boy fighter. Charlo's a PBC guy. And I mean, if he becomes undisputed, you know, what's next? Like, yeah, he defends them and then somebody else beats them and then they become undisputed and it just kind of gets passed around like that. Usually when you become undisputed, if it's plausible, if it's feasible, you move up to the next weight class, and his brother is in the next weight class. And I don't know if the Charlo brothers are like the Klitschko's. I think they are. I think they said that they wouldn't fight each other. So like, you know, at least Al Heyman and PBC have kind of a stronghold on 154 and 160 to an extent at 160, with both brothers being in two divisions. So I agree that Teixeira would be the best plausible opponent for Charlo to get and become undisputed and really build his legacy. But I just don't see it. I think PBC, Showtime, Fox, and whatever, Al Heyman, they're cool with just rotating their guys at 154 pounds. They got more than enough talent to rotate them. Tony Harrison, Charlo, Julian Williams, who else am I missing? Lara, Jarrett Hurd, you know, just rotating them, just like they do at 147 pounds. You know, I think the only person who can really make that division interesting if and when he moves up is Errol Spence Jr., because he's a big boy already. But yeah, I don't think you know, there's nobody really that stands out to me at 154 pounds. You know, they all kind of have a claim to something.
I think we could maybe see the Teixeira fight because, you know, PBC could just throw money at it, you know, give Teixeira enough money to take the fight because he's not a big name at Golden Boy. He kind of, you know, went over to fight, you know, Carlos Adames, came back with the title. I think it was kind of unexpected for Golden Boy. And I'm sure he's never had, you know, too many paydays where, you know, the kind of life-changing amounts of money that, you know, Al Heyman could offer him, you know, because I'm sure there's probably a different payday between being the undisputed champion, holding 3 belts, to Charlo now turning around and being the undisputed champion. That probably adds on maybe another 0 or something like that onto his paychecks. And essentially that's why they all do it. You know, they're both 30 years old and, you know, they're not getting any younger, as they say. So, you know, clean out that division. Like you say, there isn't many fights after that. He's just going to have to go round robin with the rest of the guys at the PBC, or, you know, maybe join his brother up a division.
Yeah, you're right. But I don't think the plan is for Jermell to go up to 160 anytime soon. So, you know, because if that happens, like I said, they're gonna rotate. It happens, you know, like we said when Taylor and Ramirez fight, I wouldn't be surprised seeing them move up to 147. Teofimo Lopez, whether wins or lose against Lomachenko, moves up to 140. So then Top Rank has claims to both divisions again. Right now it's 135 and 140. And then as time goes by, 140 and 147, you know, at least a little bit more at 147, at least more for Terrence Crawford above all. But yeah, like I said, like Jermall Charlo, which is a 160-pound Charlo, is definitely, at least to me, the more solidified one in terms of his career at this moment, with beating somebody like Derevchenko. It's not that Jermell Charlo isn't solidified, but just because of the division and he's in and how many times those belts have been passed around at 154 pounds, I think it's a lot harder to determine his place within that division. But I think Jermall, the 160-pound Charlo, I think it's funny how we have to kind of differentiate, because there's people who get confused.
Yeah, I do. I have to write it down.
Yeah, there's people who get confused, because I get confused sometimes. I think after his win against Derevchenko, and especially how he gave him his props after, he's like, "Yeah, man, that guy's as tough as he said he is." And you know, I think he did win. You know, he did win. But he fought hard, which is like what a lot of people, especially a lot of press and fans, like to see. Like, yeah, man, go through the trenches and get the win. And that's what happened. I mean, Derevchenko gave him a fight. So I think as of right now, the Jermall Charlo at 160 pounds has a more upside in his career at middleweight. But it doesn't mean Jermell can't keep those belts for a long time and then just keep fighting these other guys again, Harrison, Williams. And then if he beats them, especially if he beats them convincingly, then they're both at the top of 154 and 160, I guess, if you want to say that. But, we'll see. But the Charlo brothers, they're definitely entertaining to watch. Moving on, fight previews. This upcoming weekend, October 3rd, from the Bubble at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas on ESPN Plus. Jose Chon Zepeda, 32-2, goes up against Ivan Baranchyk. You guys might remember Zepeda when he fought Ramirez in Fresno, I believe. He gave him a pretty decent fight. I think we actually scored it for Zepeda.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Right?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about this matchup?
It's good. Definitely a stylistic clash. You've got, Zepeda, more of the boxer, against Ivan Baranchyk, who's never really in a dull fight. Kind of comes to trade, comes to go to war. Going off, Zepeda's last few performances, I would say Zepeda, just probably takes it if he can avoid Baranchyk and, avoid getting drawn into encounters in close quarters. If he just stands back and kind of boxes him from distance, I see Zepeda taking a 12-round decision. Yeah,
I can see that. I'm a fan of Zepeda. I think he still has a lot left to give at 140 pounds, especially after that Ramirez performance. So we'll see. But I like this matchup. It's a cool, intriguing matchup. So, I don't think it's going to do too well on the ratings, but at least these guys are getting some chance to get paid and have their own main event on an ESPN platform, which is great. Also on that card, Gabriel Flores Jr., 18-0 with 6 KOs, goes up against Ryan Kielweski. Did I say that right, Mike? Can you say that?
I would say that, Kielweski.
Kielweski, right? What do you think about this matchup?
Gabe Flores still kind of growing into his...
He was on the show before, too.
Yeah, Gabe Flores, obviously, is a young prodigy. He was, at the time, the youngest guy signed by Top Rank, only 16 years old, from Northern California. He's kind of still growing into his body, kind of getting his man strength and stuff like that before I think we get him on the scene, fighting some of the more well-known names. Because if you look at him, he is kind of, small and he's not really filled out yet. So I think it's quite good that Top Rank are kind of moving him very slowly. So he's very skillful. I think, this is definitely a step up for him, fighting someone like Kielweski, who's, had 34 pro fights. So this is a good test just to see really where he's at.
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, he was the youngest signee for Top Rank a couple years ago, and now he's 20 years old. So, but Top Rank, I think you're right. I agree with you. They're moving him slowly, building him up, at 18-0. I'd probably say maybe at 25 wins, ideally, is when they would really put him in there with somebody, who really can give him a test. But, it is what it is. This Sunday, the 4th of October, Joshua Buatsi goes up against Marco Kalic for the WBA International Light Heavyweight title. Buatsi's a matchroom fighter, right? Or is he a Frank Warren?
No, he's a matchroom fighter, one of Eddie Hearn's, probably one of the best prospects. I think he would, without a doubt, unless something goes horribly wrong, I think he'll definitely become a world champion. This is kind of an unknown matchup for him. Kalic had a good amateur pedigree for all the guys that have been listening to Eddie Hearn's interviews. He fought Alan Babich, the Savage, in the amateurs and beat him. Fought Cody Davis, who's signed by Sam Jones. So, this could be a good fight, a good test for Buatsi as he's working his way up to, world title level. I would imagine, in 2021, we'll see, Buatsi just, kind of explode onto the world scene.
Who's the fight that Frank Warren wanted to make against Buatsi? He has a fighter, and that's him and Eddie Hearn were trying to communicate, and
Anthony Yard.
That's what it is. Yard. I was trying to remember who it was, but he wanted to make Anthony Yard against Joshua Buatsi. What do you think about just initial thoughts on a matchup like that?
Buatsi wins.
What, really?
Yeah, I think Buatsi is just an all-round better fighter. He's got a better boxing IQ. Anthony Yard is good, powerful.
What?
I think sometimes he's more of a showman than substance. I think, with his constantly shouting lines in a camp and his pity-patty pad work. I think Buatsi is just all business. I think that he would take it. And I think that's a fight, with how good they both are and how good that would be as a British dust-up. I think, we'll probably see, Buatsi will get a world title and Yard may pick up a world title or, force his way into a mandatory. But, why take it now when, you can take it further down the line and, they both get paid well and there's more on the line for it. So
I get it, Mike. I get it. So you're a showman. You're the showman of the last round. Moving on, Chantel Cameron, 12-0, goes up against Adriana Dos Santos Araujo, 6-0 for the vacant WBC super lightweight title. Female matchup. What do you think about this?
Should be a good fight. We'll have to see how good Chantel Cameron is now under a new trainer, Jamie Moore. She's been with Jamie Moore since, I think, March 2019. So, she could see a change in style. Obviously, she's been there for just about 18 months. So we should be able to see some changes done by, Jamie Moore. I think Chantel should probably win this. And then obviously we get to see her against, some of the more, some of the British ladies, in the ring in 2021. Future opponent maybe in Katie Taylor?
Maybe the British ladies. Alan Babic, 4-0, goes up against Niall Kennedy, 13-1-1. What do you think about this matchup?
Could be, another test for Alan Babic. Obviously, he kind of jumped onto the scene with his savage persona during the lockdown fight at Eddie Hearn's house. Niall Kennedy tasted his first defeat last year at the MGM when he was defeated by Devin Vargas over here. So we should be a decent level. Niall Kennedy's, never going to win a world championship. I'd say he's more kind of, British or maybe even European level. So good test for Alan Babic because obviously he's not the biggest heavyweight where Niall Kennedy's a big guy. I think he's about 18 stones, which is...
Man. Which is what?
Which is about around 300 pounds for us over in the US. So,
damn, you're gonna have to teach me the stone thing because I don't know yet.
So that'll be a good test just to see if Babic is too small to really fight. Those larger heavyweights.
Man, 18 stone. That's what I'm just gonna say every time. Oh yeah, he weighs 18 stone. See if people react, even if they're not English or anything. News and notes of the last round podcast. Would you say combat sports biggest star? Conor McGregor went on a little tweeting rant this past weekend saying his next fight is going to be against Manny Pacquiao. And then Pacquiao responded. I don't know if he responded in a tweet or in an interview or something like that. But they will be fighting each other likely in 2021. You know why I feel this is likely real? First off, because of the money, easily, which pretty much is the only reason you need to say. But second of all, the Showtime card, the Showtime pay-per-view from this past weekend for the Charlo brothers. Did you see who the primary sponsor was?
Yeah, Proper 12.
Proper 12. That's all I have to say about that, Mike. What do you think?
I think it'll happen. I think ever since Manny Pacquiao signed with the same PR company that Conor McGregor is at, Paradigm, I think it's called.
Right.
I think we all kind of knew he'd already fought Floyd Mayweather. There was always talk about him coming back and, doing some more kind of celebrity matches or exhibitions, whatever you want to call it. So, it kind of made sense. I'm sure it will sell. Conor McGregor talks well. I'm sure he'll probably, go out there and, pull the PR stunts. Manny Pacquiao's obviously got a huge following. Right. Do it over in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, wherever it is they're going to do it. I'm sure they'll get an enormous site fee there. It's combat sports. The gladiators, they put their life on the line when they get into the ring. People will probably pay for it. So, good on them if they can get paid to do that. It's not going to be much of a fight. If Pacquiao decides that he's just going to turn it on, he could probably blow Conor McGregor out there in a round. It'd be a kind of good to see what they're going to fight at. I think obviously Pacquiao fights at 147. McGregor's been moving up, and I think he fights somewhere between 160 to 170. So
He can make 155, 154.
Well, we'll see. What fight it's going to be at, but unless Pacquiao decides to carry him for a few rounds, Pacquiao will, should get him out of there pretty early.
I guess the Notorious versus a Pac-Man, which pretty likely to happen in 2021. At least if there's fans, or unless they get a big site fee. But Miguel Berchelt versus Oscar Valdez is set for December 12th on ESPN. This is another great matchup between these two fighters. I think, especially after Valdez's last performance, I think Berchelt is the obvious favorite going into this matchup. But it is a great matchup between both of these fighters at 130 pounds. Arguably the best fight that can be made at 130 pounds, you would say. I'm just glad they finally announced it officially because that means it's real, barring any injuries. Right, Mike? What do you think?
Great matchup. I think we've spoken before about how much we wanted to see this. Great fight for that division. If I'm making my pick this early, I would have to go with Berchelt. I think he's just so heavy-handed.
Right.
His body work when we were ringside for his one of his last fights, you could just hear the thud every time he went to the body. And Valdez, for me, gets hit too much too often. Yeah,
but we'll see. We'll see. So obviously, if you got to this part of the last round podcast here, we appreciate it. Stephen Breadman Edwards is our interview of the week here. He was interviewed earlier this weekend. Mike conducted the interview to best accommodate the time schedule of Mr. Edwards. So obviously, if you listen through our rants here throughout our reviews, previews, and news and notes of the last round here, we appreciate it. But Mike, if you want to just give before we transition to the interview with Stephen Edwards, give people kind of a general overview of what the interview was about.
Yeah, we did an interview with Stephen Breadman Edwards. We kind of we talk about his how he got into boxing, kind of go into some of the philosophies of his training methods, what he looks for in fighters. And then we went through the Charlo card. I got him to review those fights for me. And then we spoke about the potential fight with Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez and some other future fights, because obviously he's quite well known to be a betting man, so he does good previews and reviews of fights. So we kind of got him to touch on some of those as well. Yep.
Yeah, pretty good interview, about 40 minutes, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
So once again, guys, we appreciate you getting to this point and listening to us talk some boxing. Hopefully we caught you up on the latest news and notes, previews and reviews of the last week, which is the sport we call boxing. But like I said, Mike, this here's Mike's interview with Stephen Breadman Edwards.
And now it's time for the last round interview of the week.
Stephen Breadman Edwards. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. How you doing?
I'm good. I just thought I'd get you on today so we can get you to review the fights from last night, and kind of before we do that, get you to jump into your career to date. So how did you get started in boxing?
I used to box, when I was in college, more so as a hobby. And then, started working and getting out in the real world. I always wanted to get back into it. And about 10, 11 years ago, I started training fighters.
Who was the first fighter you trained?
Actually, Julian Williams.
Any coaches or mentors that you looked at when you first started jumping into coaching?
I never had like an actual mentor, like somebody that I shadow in the gym and teach me things like that. I learned a lot of things on my own from my own boxing experiences. And Nazem Richardson and Virgil Hunter were sort of people that I valued their opinion. I respected them. They would talk to me about boxing and things like that. And they always had kind of words of advice and words of encouragement for me. but I never. I guess I would say that Virgil Hunter will probably be a mentor, and Azim will probably be a mentor, but a mentor and more of a a mentor more in like just life and how to handle myself as a trainer, not actually teaching me how to train, if that makes sense.
How hard is it for you as a coach? Because like you just touched on, you're kind of more than a coach. You're kind of like a father figure. You're a teacher. You're kind of a mentor. You help them mentally. So how hard is that for you to do all of those jobs?
I wouldn't say it's hard. If the fighter is compliant, it's not hard. If you have a fighter who is ungrateful and doesn't respect the things that you're doing, then it becomes difficult because you are a father figure. They may not like that word, but you are a mentor. You have to make life decisions for them. You have to get into their personal lives if their personal lives interfere with training. So there's a lot of different things that you have to deal with that's way bigger than boxing. And when you have to take on those roles, as a trainer, that should be appreciated. Sometimes you're managing money. It's a lot of things that go into that, and I find that to be the most difficult part of the job. Whereas, it's more than just training, and people don't respect that, but it is. It's a lot more than just training. And when, it's difficult. I've had a lot of situations where I've had to deal with things that was way out of my pay scale, and it's like, man, and sometimes you don't get the gratitude and appreciation from the fighters because you're not their parent, but you have to act as a parent in a lot of situations.
What is it you look for in a fighter when they walk into the gym to show that, you're going to spend that time with them? Because there's only so many hours in a day, and I'm sure you have plenty of people that come and go through the door.
Physically, I look for, there's a certain look that you want to have and see from a fighter. Their twitch fibers have a way about them, the way their body is built, the way their structure is, how coordinated they are when they shadow box. Obviously hitting the mitts with them, you can feel different things on them. Character-wise, which is a bigger deal to me, I look for a lot of things. I look for family structure. I look for who they come to the gym with, how often they come to the gym, their language around older people. Do they curse and say disrespectful things? It's so many things I look for as far as, as far as their character. How many coaches they've had. That's a big deal to me. Who their management is, because really, as the trainer, you're really the manager because you're picking and choosing fights. A lot of these managers, they just have a lot of money, so they kind of spoil the fighter with money. But as the trainer, you have the first and last say and who they fight. So I'm curious to see who the manager is, because if a guy is getting a high percentage taken from him from a manager, that may not be a job that I will want, because at that point I would have to, it's just a different dynamic towards it. When I first started training Julian, I didn't let him take any money from anybody, because that forces you to take fights that you can't win. It forces a large percentage of your purse to go towards the manager. It's so many things that go on the business side that nobody realizes in boxing. And you don't want to have to deal with certain things.
For the mental aspects of training, is there anything that you do to mentally prepare fighters?
Oh, sure. Just making them go behind their normal limits is something that I do. Pushing them in the ring with 2 and 3 sparring partners. Fighters lie all the time. So I go with them to run to make sure that they're running. I check their weight constantly. The camp has to be harder than the fight. You have to really grind the fighter down, because mentally, they have to be able to overcome certain things in a real fight. And you see, sometimes a fight is a battle of mind. Sometimes it's not physical. And it's not always about who's a coward and who's not. Sometimes it's about who has more composure under pressure. Sometimes it's about who can keep their heart rate down and not panic under pressure. So it's not just, who's a tough guy, because sometimes you see guys, they panic under pressure and they do stupid things on a consistent basis. And that really doesn't show up in the, that doesn't show up as visual as some other things like hand speed or punching power. But the ability to stay composed under pressure, that's a big deal in boxing. So there's a lot of things, you just have to know what you're looking for, man, but mental stability and being mentally tough and being able to push yourself beyond the limits and to be able to train on a consistent basis and the discipline, fighters only, a human body only craves 4 things: sex, water, food, and sleep. That's it. And if you notice that fighters have the biggest issue out of all of those 4 things, they can't stop eating, so they screw themselves up with weight. They won't leave the women alone, which is, that's not a myth in my opinion. And they don't get enough rest. Rest is your recovery, allowing yourself to rest.
So we all hear of people that are gym fighters. Do you think that's something that can be changed when you obviously do things with them mentally?
Sure, but some guys are better in the gym than they are in real fights because there's no judges in the gym. So they can relax because they don't have to worry about winning rounds. They're sort of more in a relaxed state. And being able to relax is the biggest, it's the number one thing in boxing.
Do you think exposure can help that? Taking them to big events and stuff like that, so they don't get.
I mean, that's why you come through the prospect stage. That's why you fights early, so you can get used to being in the ring and being under pressure and doing it over and over and over and over again. That's why you do that. So that's a big deal. It's a huge deal. A fighter who can handle the pressure of a tough fight and not panic and not and I mean, I've seen guys in the gym that are lights out and then they get in the fights and they freeze up because that's real.
How hard is it for you as a coach when you see people like that? They have like all the skills and, they just don't have it mentally or they just don't have the dedication because, on this podcast, we've spoken a few times about Frankie Gomez, who, was undefeated, had his biggest win against Mauricio Herrera and then just disappeared.
Some guys don't have it mentally. As a coach, you have to be patient because everybody moves at a different rate, but after a while, you kind of got to piss or get off the bucket. But you try to be patient as a coach. You try to be encouraging and you try to be always optimistic because everybody is different. It's guys at the world-class level that have panic attacks. It happens. You know what I mean? We're all human beings and everything. A fight is the ultimate test of that. I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting, you're getting punched in the face in front of millions of people and everybody's going to judge you. So it's not easy. So you got to be considerate and you have to show them empathy. I try to be as positive as I can with fighters. That's why you got to train a certain kind of fighter. You train a fighter that's not humble and that talks a lot of shit, kind of hard to be empathetic towards that fighter. But if you train a patient with him, you know what I mean? So
after a knockout, how long do you as a coach think that somebody should take a break? Because obviously we just had Dylan White was knocked out by Povetkin and they've already arranged a rematch. And I think it's about 12 weeks from, the day he was knocked out to the rematch in November.
That's a good question. I think that, ideally you don't want to take another punch for at least 2 months. But everybody's different. I wouldn't want one of my guys to take another punch for another 2 months. That was a bad knockout.
You think that's too quick? Just coming back in 3 months? Because obviously I think he's got 6 weeks of no sparring and then he's got 6 weeks of obviously training camp where he's allowed to spar.
I mean, I don't know his body, but I don't think he takes a good punch. Obviously he doesn't take a good punch. He's been knocked out bad a couple of times and he's been hurt often. So going by that, I expect him to get knocked out bad again.
Obviously, you're based in Philadelphia. They've got a huge history of, boxers coming out of there. Liston, Frazier, Matthew Muhammad, Meldrick Taylor. Can you just describe to us what makes Philadelphia such a boxing city?
You know what it is? I just think that the average guy in Philadelphia is better than the average guy anywhere else. So I get calls all the time about sparring in the city because simply like a guy that's not looked at as a good fighter here in the city, just the average guy, maybe a record of maybe 12 wins and 3 or 4 losses. He's good anywhere else and can be a serviceable sparring partner because guys just can fight here. So that is the thing. Our baseline average guy is better. Like I have a nephew that lives in Florida. He won the Nationals, a couple of national tournaments. He lives in Miami. So he comes up from Florida, and he never, ever gets the better of the sparring up here because the guys up here are just so much more advanced than the guys where he spars at.
Is that just because there's so many fighters, which obviously brings up the talent?
Yes. It's just a lot of fighters. And there's a lot of guys who don't make it, but it's just guys that could just naturally fight in the gym. You know what I mean? Without having to be elite amateurs or world-class pros, they just can just fight. When I was a kid, I used to just go to the gym and just fight for fun because I just wanted something to do. And it was like recreational to me. I didn't even care about, so much about being a great fighter or turning pro or anything. It was kind of like recreational. So you get that a lot in Philadelphia, guys that are just gym rats and they just like to fight a little bit.
Is there any fighters in particular that you make your fighters watch tape of?
Yeah. It depends on who we're fighting and what I'm teaching. But, I like my guys to watch a little bit of Terry Norris, Donald Curry, Sugar Ray Leonard, Felix Trinidad, Fernando Vargas, Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins. Guys that have really sound fundamentals, or if it's something specific that I'm trying to teach, I have my guys watch them.
I know that you're kind of well known now for being able to assess a fight and pick a good winner, and I think you picked Charlo yesterday.
I picked both Charlos yesterday.
Did you win big on them?
Yes. Yep. I picked Jamel by knockout and Jamal to win.
You've got 2 really good fighters coming out of Philadelphia right now. You have Jaron Ennis and Stephen Fulton that I think you know both very well.
Yes, I do.
Both world champions in the making?
Yes. Both of them will win world titles.
What do you think about Jaron? Because obviously he's in a very tough division.
I think he's going to be just fine. He can really fight. He's really good, really talented. Hopefully he gets a pretty good prospect over there. Just somebody to bring out his skill set because he hasn't, been able to get certain guys in the ring.
I think he'll struggle to get one of those fights already because no one's going to want to give him a voluntary shot because he's that good.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Like, he may have to fight like another fellow good prospect, because nobody's going to want to fight him. He can really fight. He's really good. Really good.
Stephen Fulton's got the mandatory shot at Angelo Leo coming up.
Yes. Stephen Fulton's really good too. He's not the puncher that Jaron Ennis is, but he's really good also. He can go. Really strong, really smart, really fit. Stephen Fulton is known in our city as the guy who is the best runner. Nobody can beat Stephen Fulton running miles. He can really, really run, man. He can run from one end of the city to the other end. And I'm not exaggerating. I sat in my car and I timed him one day, and in about 38 minutes, he can fly.
Turning the attention to the fights from last night. So Jamal Charlo, now 31-0, unanimous decision over Derevinchenko. What did you think of that performance from Charlo? I thought it was a breakout performance from both of them.
I thought it was solid. It wasn't electrifying to me, but I don't expect him to be electrifying. I thought it was solid. I thought it was good. Derevinchenko had his moments. And Jamal won how I thought he would win. He uses his jab. He's a big, strong guy. And the thing about the Charlo brothers that people don't give them credit for is they can take good punches. They usually, if you watch them fight very closely, they're usually the toughest guy in the ring. They usually can give more punishment and take the other guy's punishment better than the guy can take theirs. And Derenchenko had a lot of heart. He did really well, but he was busted up. He was constantly being wobbled, where Jamal was withstanding his punches better. And that counts in the fight. You know, boxing isn't always, you know, the more skillful guy. Sometimes it's the guy who's the more durable. It's the guy who can just take more. And both of those guys can take, they're usually, I mean, I haven't seen a fight where the other guy took their punches better than they took Jamal and Jamel. They have good chins.
And then Brandon Figueroa, TKO 10 over Damian Vasquez. What did you think of that fight? Because the referee got a lot of abuse for not stopping the fight.
I think it was a good fight. You know, Brandon Figueroa was supposed to fight Stephen Fulton up here in Philadelphia. I mean, not in Philadelphia, but Stephen Fulton in Philadelphia. So it always just like Stephen Fulton trains at the same gym with me. So when Stephen Fulton didn't have a lot of fights, you know, they wanted to fight Stephen Fulton. And then once he got about 15, 16 fights and he was ready for the fight, they didn't want to fight him. You know, and so that always bothers me that it seemed like they were trying to pick on him when he was, you know, not as experienced. I think Brandon Figueroa is solid, but I mean, I think he's really benefiting from some good matchmaking, if I'm being honest.
As a coach, how do you feel about, you know, the fighter going out on the shield, or you pulling them out and living to fight another day? Because the referee wasn't going to stop it last night, a lot of people on Twitter were saying, well, you know, the corner should have thrown in the towel.
That's a tough question. You know, fighters will tell you that they want to go out on their shield. But for me, I have to see certain things because I will stop a fight if I see my fighter helpless or being hurt. And sometimes a fighter can kind of, I don't want to use the word quit. He can kind of surrender if he's showing you different body languages. You know, if somebody asks a fighter, can they see? And the fighter say they can't see. That's them wanting to surrender. Because if you say you can't see, no doctor or judge is going to let you fight. You see a fighter blinking and wobbling extra, that means they want to get out of there. So you got to watch their body language. You know, fighters are very, very brave, but they're more prideful. You know, so the right thing to say sometime is, I'm willing to die in the ring. But everybody's not really willing to die. You know what I mean? You got to be a special, and that's okay. Everybody don't have to want to die. Like Diego Corrales, he wanted to die. You know, he has a different kind of mentality. You know what I mean? Arturo Gatti, he wanted to die. Those are different kind of dudes. So everybody don't want to die in the ring. You know, so sometimes you got to look at a guy's body language and you got to be willing to stop a fight. You just do, you know what I mean? So I don't get into when a fighter tells me they're willing to die and all that kind of stuff, you know, because I need to see certain things or I'm stopping the fight. I haven't had to stop any fights, you know, yet. You know, I probably worked maybe 65, 70 professional fights. I haven't had to physically throw the towel in and stop a fight, but I'm more than willing to because you can get a fighter's life is in your hands in the ring. So you can't be brave with the punishment that they're taking. You have to be willing to stop the fights and you have to be willing to do it at the right time. You can't be squeamish either. You can't stop a fight too early just because your man is hurt or buzzed, and you don't want to stop it too late because you can get somebody killed. So that's a tough call, and trainers have to be really cognizant of that.
The corner can't be, you know, braver than the fighter, I guess.
Yes. You can't be braver than a fighter, and it's a tough call because at the same time you have to inspire the fighter. You know, if you see a fighter getting tired or not feeling well, you got to be able to push him like, come on, man, let's work. Don't let this guy take this from you. You know, and at the same time, you can't push him into a place that he don't want to go. You know, if a guy wants to give, you know, it's really tough, man. It really is. And sometimes the guy's not hurt, he's fatigued. And fatigue will make you turn into a person that wants to give. But I have ultimate respect for fighters, and I'm really, really careful about that. I've seen guys get pushed when he didn't want anymore, and I've seen guys get pushed and they were thankful for the coach for pushing them. So that is like, it's a hell of a judgment call.
Because one of the fights you can look at from recently is Povetkin, Dylan White. He'd been down twice. I think nobody would have really have complained, if his corner had pulled him out. And then next thing you know, he pulls out that wonderful uppercut and he wins.
But you know what? I didn't think he was in danger of having to have his corner stop the fight. Being hurt and being helpless are different. He was just hurt. That was a fight. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. You can't be squeamish about it. He was just hurt. All right, he's hurt. He got knocked down. Maybe he can come back. Let's give him a chance. You got to give your guy a chance. Povetkin is a good fighter, so you got to give him a chance. That's a little different than the guy that's helpless and being beat on round after round after round, and he's like, his body is given. That's different. Povetkin, I never got that sense from him. He just got dropped early. He got up, but he was still functional. He was still functioning correctly. His mind was okay. He was just a little bit hurt.
All right. The next one on that card, we have Casemiro, TKO 3 over Duke Micah. What did you think of that performance? I thought Casemiro looked good, looked strong. Yeah,
I like him, man. He really brings it. He's exciting. He's a big puncher. He's strong. Man, he's a good fighter. Do
you think that was a step too far, too quick for Duke Micah?
What is he, 24-0? At that weight division, you got to be ready to fight. I don't know if he ever be able to beat that guy. Sometimes it's just like that. He probably, African fighters don't get a lot of publicity. He probably had to take his chance. So, it's just one of those things. Every time you lose is not a mistake. Sometimes the guy's just better than you.
Another one which I think was kind of a surprise was Daniel Roman, unanimous decision over Juan Carlos Payano. A lot of people scored that to Payano.
I didn't watch that one. It was a long night, man. I didn't watch that one. Yeah.
It was a strange one. Danny Roman only threw and connected, I think, with 5 jabs. Did a lot of body work as normal. A lot of people had it towards Payano, and the Showtime presenters actually had it to Payano. But Danny Roman got the nod. 116, 112 on 3 judges' cards. Did you see the Lewis Neri fight?
A little bit. That was a kind of a boring fight, to be honest. I don't want to say anything bad, but I didn't like the fight. So I kind of was turning back and forth.
Jamel Charlo against somebody you know well, Jason Rosario.
Yes, I did. See, I was kind of out and about last night, so I was doing a lot of things, but I did settle down, and I finally got to see that one.
What did you think of that one?
I bet Jamel Charlo. Julian Williams had a lot of issues going into that fight, so I knew Jason Rosario was good, but sometimes you can look better than you are. And in this era, one fight, everybody just goes crazy and turn you into a monster. Jason Rosario is a good fighter. He really is. He's a strong kid. He can punch and everything, but he probably fought a little over his head versus Julian, and Julian has a lot of issues going into the fight, and the result was what it was. But I've always thought that Rosario was susceptible to the body. I watched this fight with Gallimore, and Jamel went to his body, and he was calm under the pressure, and he did what he had to do. I actually think Rosario might be in trouble now because he looks like a guy that spars a whole lot. He has like glassy eyes, man, and you get used up in boxing. Matchmakers in training see that. Next thing you know, upcoming prospects are going to be picking him to fight. That was a bad knockout, and his equilibrium kept getting knocked off. So, Rosario, you got to be careful with him now. Somebody else might hit him, and that just be it. He was getting hurt. But it was weird as he was in the fight. The rounds that he wasn't getting hurt in, he was winning. That was the weird thing because Jamel's not busy, and Rosario can punch, so he walks you down. So the rounds he was getting hurt in, he was actually winning. Wasn't getting hurt. He was actually winning. He probably won 2, 3, 4, and 5. It was weird, but it kind of happened the way I thought it would happen. Jamel has a way of landing the shot that he needs to land, even though that he may lose rounds. He knows how to land his shot, and You know, I think Rosario is a tough guy, but he doesn't have a granite chin. He was stopped by Nathaniel Gallimore. And Jamel has a good chin. And again, Jamel took his punches better than Rosario took his, and that counts in boxing, especially in the shootout.
It was a strange day because we had that fight which finished with a body shot, and then also the Josh Taylor fight earlier in the day, you know, finished with a body shot, which kind of came out of nowhere because, you know, they weren't both big shots. I think they were both just placed really well.
Yeah, I'm big on Josh Taylor. I had to rewind his fight like 5 times. It was hard to see that shot. I think the Jamel shot was a big shot. I think that people can underrate a jab, especially when you're not expecting it. And Jamel stepped into that shot. And Jason Rosario's equilibrium was already knocked out from the 6-round knockdown. And that does something to the oxygen in your body. And a lot of times guys can't rehydrate properly over there in the bubble. They can't do the little weight tricks that they usually do to lose weight. For all we know, Rosario could have stuffed himself with food. I think that was a good shot. When I was watching the fight and I saw him get it, I was like, oh, good jab to the – oh, shit, he's down. So I thought that was a good shot. You know, just because it was a jab, that doesn't mean it wasn't a good shot. The Josh Taylor shot, it's hard to tell. Maybe that was the placement. That didn't look like too big of a shot. But I think Jamel really stepped into it and hit that kid in the solar plexus, and the kid was already sucking for wind, and he didn't expect the shot.
Jason Rosario was somebody that you looked at using for sparring for Julian Williams. Is that right?
A while back, yep.
Yeah. You're not working with Julian anymore?
No.
No. Who is coaching Julian now?
I don't know. I don't know.
A fight we've got upcoming is Teofimo Lopez against Vasyl Lomachenko. Which way will you be placing your bets on that one?
I probably won't bet on that fight. I think it's a closer fight than people realize. I really don't know. I think it's a really, really close fight. I think that Lomachenko is getting older. And I think that I'm not saying he's not in his prime anymore, but I don't think he's at his peak. I think he slipped a little bit. So I think he has to be really careful in this fight. This is a hard fight for me to tell. It really is. I don't know. I'm probably going to enjoy this fight. I can't really get a take because I could see Lomachenko outboxing him, but I could also see him knocking Lomachenko out.
Another one that looks like it's going to be made is Terence Crawford, Kell Brook.
Crawford.
All day?
All day and twice on Sundays. Kell Brook pretty much took a hiatus after he lost to Earl Spence. Made it seem like he can't make 147. Now he's coming back down to 147 to fight Terence Crawford. Crawford, big. Be competitive because Brook is skilled, but Crawford will take it to him early. I mean, it's just, I'm betting that fight. Crawford. I mean, Kell Brook has seemed to lost his will to fight. You know, he loses a fight. He pretty much took off 3 years, you know, and then made weight excuses, which can be a valuable reason. But if the weight was an issue then it's definitely an issue now. As you get older, it's harder to make weight. Your metabolism slows down. So if he had trouble making weight at 147 in 2017, of course he's going to have trouble making weight in 2020. As you get older, you have more trouble making weight. That's a fact. Your body slows, your metabolism slows down. So I think Crawford, either unanimous decision or stops him late. Kell Brook does have a good chin, but I think he's going to lose the fight.
What do you think Terence has to do to be able to get the big fights?
You know, I don't want to play manager with anybody's career, but don't you think it's obvious? It's obvious. They're boxing him out. So either he'll wait for the winner of Ramirez and Taylor to move up and wait and maybe fight Patrick Texeira. I don't want to seem like I'm recruiting for PBC, but they have all of the welterweights. I mean, what's he going to do? Give Jaron Ennis a shot? And would you fight that kid? All right, then. I mean, it's pretty much common sense. You know, I don't know. You know, he's a great fighter, you know, but I just think that it's obvious what's happening.
You touched on a fight there that I wanted to ask you about, Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez. Who do you see coming out on top in that?
I think that's the fight of the year.
Yeah.
That's going to be the fight of the year. both of those guys bring it. They're like attacking fighters. If I had to pick, I would say Josh Taylor, but I think Taylor has trouble making weight. That's a great fight. Great fight. I think Taylor by a smidge, but what a fight that's going to be. That's going to be a great fight.
And if and when, Josh wins that, he steps up to 147 and fights Crawford, how would you see that fight?
Let me see how he does with Ramirez first. Crawford is the best fighter in the world, in my opinion. And I love Josh Taylor, but I don't know if he can beat Terrence Crawford at 147. That's a huge jump because I think Taylor is winning a lot of his fights on physicality. He's a big guy to be 47. He's tall and he's strong. So when he moves up to 47, he's not going to have those same advantages. So let's see how he does with Ramirez. And then Crawford is a whole different level of fighter, man. Terrence Crawford is no joke.
Another one I'd like to get your opinion on is Ryan Garcia, Luke Campbell.
I like Ryan Garcia to beat Luke Campbell.
You do?
Yep. I think Ryan Garcia is better than people realize he is. And I like Luke Campbell. I think he's a solid fighter, but I think he's a guy who is I think he's used to losing at this point. Sometimes when a fighter is kind of used to losing a little bit and then taking some tough losses over the last few years or whatever, I think it shows in a weird kind of way. They have a tendency to keep losing those kind of fights. They have a tendency to just come up short. And I think there's a reason behind that. I think that he's kind of used to losing these fights. And I think that Ryan Garcia will beat him.
Another one that just got made this week, Miguel Berchelt against Oscar Valdez in December.
Great fight. I like Berchelt.
What's your opinion on all of the celebrity fights we keep seeing? Conor McGregor, Manny Pacquiao, supposedly. Mayweather against Logan Paul, supposedly.
I don't like that stuff, but that's not, it's a business, and if it makes money, you gotta do what you gotta do. But that's not stuff that I like to I don't watch fight. I couldn't watch Manny Pacquiao versus Conor McGregor. It's kind of like a little bit of a freak show. But I'm happy for everybody that can make money in boxing. I would train them for the fight. You know what I mean? So but it's not like something that you like really, really want to like engage in or watch. It's definitely not. It's when you're a purist, you don't like fights like that. Do
you think it's bad for boxing?
I'm not going to say it's bad or good. It's just like you got guys that take boxing serious and train and go to the amateur tournaments and do all of these things, and then they can never come in and make stuff. Put it this way. I don't think Conor McGregor is bad for boxing because he's a real fighter. He's just not a boxer. He does train in MMA, and at one time he was a serious guy in the sport. But one of those YouTube guys I don't like that. That's not fair to boxers. That's not fair. They get to come into boxing, and guys that have been fighting their whole career have to fight on the undercards. I don't like that.
That's true. What are the big fights that you're looking forward to for the rest of the year?
Loma and Lopez is big. I don't know if Taylor is going to be this year. Taylor versus Ramirez. Let's see. I don't know. Who's Monster now fighting next? I'm a big fan of his. I like him a lot. I can't really think of like any more big fights before the year is out except for Loma and Lopez. I think that's the biggest fight of the year. And if they make Taylor and Ramirez before 2021, that's a purist fight. I would like to see that. Wait, Earl Spence and Danny Garcia.
Garcia, yes.
Yeah, that's a big fight. Yeah, I'm very intrigued by that.
Are you going Spence?
It's hard for me to pick against a Philly guy, but I do think that Spence will open as the favorite. I can't say who I'm picking right now because I want to see some things from both. I want to see how camps are going. I think the fight's more competitive than people believe it is because Danny Garcia is another guy with a world-class chin. You know, he has a world-class chin that counts. And I think that we got to see how Spence looks after his accident. That's an X factor.
Is there any prospects coming through that you could tell us about that we may not already know, away from the big names like your Devin Haney's and your Ryan Garcias? Anyone kind of under the radar?
I mean, I have a kid named Romeo Cruz that I'm really high on, but I'm probably biased. He's 4-0. But as far as on the national scene, I don't know. Jaron Ennis, you know, I think he's good. I think Tony Yoka is good, the French heavyweight. I think he's good. Let's see. Man. I'm trying to see some guys that I'm really high on that I like. Kind of getting a brain freeze right now, and I can't really think of anybody, but I'm sure as soon as I hang up, I'll think of some guys that I think highly of. I said Jaron Ennis already. I don't know. I'm on my guys, man. Concentrate on the guys that I train. I got about 3 or 4 kids that I train in my gym personally.
Okay. You try and keep the stable small just so you can kind of give them the attention?
Yes. I don't want to train over 5 fighters. It's too hard. I have a hard enough time with the 3 guys I have now.
And 5 is the max?
That's the max. Absolute max.
Can you just let our listeners know, because I read that recently that you actually recovered from the coronavirus?
Yes. Yep. I caught it in July. It was pretty tough, but when I got over it.
How was it? How was the 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you were sick?
Brutal. Couldn't taste or smell anything. Lost a lot of weight. It's tough. Really tough.
How much weight did you lose?
15 pounds.
Whoa, a lot.
Yep. And I'm already kind of thin. So yeah, I lost 15 pounds.
So you had to quarantine and stay away from the fighters for 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah. I stayed away for 3 weeks and I waited till I tested negative.
Did you test positive because you felt sick, or were you going to a fight and tested?
I tested positive. I was working the fight, and I felt a little cold coming on, but I didn't know what it was. And then, that's what it was. And then the stronger symptoms started coming through, kind of heavy after that.
All right, then, Steve, I don't want to take up too much of your time because obviously you're a busy man, and obviously you're going to go and watch the Philadelphia Eagles today. If you want to just tell everybody where they can find, if you want to just tell everybody where you can find them on your Instagram and your Twitter page.
I don't talk boxing on Instagram, but I do talk about it on Twitter. I think it's at Breadman Boxing on Twitter.
And if they want any tips for the fights, they should follow you on there. You have a good win percentage.
Yeah. I actually started a little website called boxingpick.com. So I'm pretty good. I'm all right. Nobody gets them all right, but I'm pretty solid. Yeah,
I follow you. You do well. You seem to pick a lot of good winners.
Yep. Did good last night.
All right then, Stephen. I just want to thank you again for your time, and hopefully catch up with you again.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.